Tetrio is a modern block stacker, similar to the Tetris many people know and love, where you defeat your opponents by filling their board with garbage. The objective itself is simple, but the game's skill can range from two newcomers learning to improve, to a literal showdown between gods. The game is great for all skill levels, and crazy fast improvement is abundant. Like many other competitive games, there's an exponential skill curve where it gets harder and harder to compete with players above you as you continue to improve. In this game, a common but rough measure of skill is the rate at which a player can send garbage. We call this APM, and we can use this idea to assign every player a spot on a graph. Immediately you can see the exponential curve. In fact, if you divide players under 50 APM to players above 50 APM, everyone on top seems to be on a completely different plane of existence. If you take a look at the small dots up here, this is the average APM for 4 out of more than 35,500 active players, which is 0.011% of the demographic. In fact, one player is missing from this graph, because they're actually above it. But of course these numbers aren't a complete reflection of every player's skill. Well then, what is? We have letter ranks storing every player into a general skill level, but no matter how big the group is, ranks are divided by what percentile you're in. You have the expected ranks, D, C, B, A, S, and modifiers in between, but then you move on to the big three, SS, U, and X. By many, these are considered the pro players of the community, but the difference is overwhelming. SS makes up the top 11% of players, U makes up the top 5%, and X takes up the top 1%. Meaning that among the more than 35,500 active players, only around 350 are considered to be in the highest level group. Even then, the lowest X rank definitely has a much higher climb to go for before they're even close to matching up with the very top. What makes someone a top player? A high level player? What about a competitive player? That's why I brought a few well-known top players to share what they think.
A competitive level in terms of when a player begins to play competitively, I'd say would be around high SS area. I think that's around where a player would begin.
The second someone goes past like the point where it's just casual and they're just like, oh, this is something I can kind of just do for just complete fun and leisure. I want to get good at this. Like, as long as you have that drive to improve and get better, I'd consider you like a competitive player. Like, you know,
high level is highly subjective, but if I give my personal honest opinion, I'd say like 24,800 players and above, I'd consider like high level players, because those are the kinds of players that have like a solid grasp of the game mechanics and can begin to think a little bit beyond just like, oh, I need to make sure I don't screw up this down stack, or I need to make sure I see that T-spin and stuff.
So high level is a little bit harder because obviously my perspective is kind of skewed since I'm, you know, top player. I'm honestly not sure how to answer this question because it's all a matter of like perspective. Say just like, oh, you're a top player when you, or not top player, you're a high level player when you reach like X rank. I don't know if that would reflect, you know, the general definition of higher level player.
Top level play, I'd consider to be like players that can place top 8 at like top tournaments. So I'd say like top 20, top 30 players probably would be considered top level.
So my definition of top level, again, is probably really skewed, but I have like an actual sort of answer for this. If you're able to consistently place like top 8 or so in a tournament, then I would consider you a top player.
Because their downstep are much better, have very good mid-game, and their decisions much better than high-level players. That's all.
Being one of the top dogs is only achievable among the most dedicated, and these Tetrio players couldn't have made it there without their beginnings. Compared to other communities, even the classic Tetris community, it's quite small in the grand scheme of things, even though more than 1 million people have played the game. Even so, games like Tetris 99 and Puyo Puyo Tetris have widened the audience much more than it ever has in the past, and prominent figures like Suisei Hoshimachi from the Hololive community continue to impress the general audience, despite rarely interacting with other notable players. Tetrio isn't just for top players. There are plenty of new players, just there to have fun with the game.
Well, for me, this is a bit of a personal story because I got introduced to it quite young from my mother on a Tetris battle, like ages ago. So what made it seem worth playing was sort of like, it was kind of a throwback to then, because I had already experienced a decent amount of Tetris when I was extremely young. And so, I don't know, some kind of nostalgia factor, I guess.
The way I got into the game was through SimpleFlips, actually. I think a lot of people actually know him. He's a pretty popular content creator, but I used to follow him back when he speedran like Mario 64 and Mario 64 ROM hacks. But I hadn't watched him for a while, and then one day I saw him playing Puyo Puyo Tetris 1 for the Switch. And at first I thought it was a little bit silly, but it really drew me in, like, the competitive aspect of it, because even before I started playing Tetris, I was still like a really competitive person, and I just liked the feeling of just like matching up against like one other person or like a few other people, and just like, you know, fighting it out and seeing who's better, I guess.
I like the idea of attacking and defending in guideline Tetris. It makes games are fun to play or spectate once you know what is going on.
I think there needs to be kind of a better way for players to learn to just stack, because I see a common issue where, like, especially like seat rank and below players just trying to figure out how to get the pieces together properly. And I think that's kind of a stage of development for players that could be improved on, I believe. Maybe a tutorial, maybe guides, like recommendations with an algorithm or AI. I don't know the details, but all those things.
One is like something I'm kind of working on, is like having more top players, I guess, like kind of stream the game and like show off their gameplay to others, because I feel like while having a lot of different players from different skill levels is like is good for the game to have those people streaming. I mean, that's definitely good for the fame, I guess, of the game, but I feel like what's going to attract the most people is going to be like the high level of Tetris. And there's a few Tetrio streamers that are really good at the game, but I don't feel like there's like enough, I guess. So I'm kind of working on streaming more often.
The game has seen plenty of people come and go onto the scene, and for the first time in ages, it feels like the modern Tetris community is taking a step forward and reaching out to plenty of more players.
It's all about finding the highest value content you can make at any given time, and maximizing the value of whatever decides to catch the algorithm.
Another tremendous leap for the game coming in the near future is the inclusion of having characters with abilities and more to keep the formula fresh and exciting.
My hopes? I'd say, firstly, I hope that the community stays somewhat close to the way it is. I know that there's a lot of criticisms that you have any gaming community, but I think a lot of Tetrio players take the community a little bit for granted, because if you really think about it, Tetrio community is a decent amount less toxic than most of the gaming communities you'll find out there, so I really hope it stays that way. And this kind of goes at odds with my second hope, which is that the game becomes more popular. And I know that those two things kind of like go against each other, but the game definitely needs some more exposure. I think Tetris is something that everybody kind of recognizes at a very basic level, but people actually playing the game is another thing entirely. And so I'd hope that can grow in the future as well.
So my hopes for the future of Tetrio, all I hope is that, you know, the people on the team that are currently like, you know, sending this update out, I hope they just have like the game's best interest in mind, of just being like, you know, a fun competitive experience, and that it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mess with that too much, because that's really why I love this game. It would be really cool for this game to also have more exposure. I mean, I feel like it's getting more exposure, like this year. Like I feel like a lot of people have gotten into the game, but I feel like there could be even more.
Despite being one of the most popular ways to play modern Tetris nowadays, this game was made possible by an indie developer, Osk. That's right, this game was made by a single person, and it still managed to cram in so many features that help players in their journey through Guideline Tetris. It's a tribute well deserved on behalf of the community.